All right, so are we ready to go? Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the Program Performance Report. My name is Cherie Moon. We have, of course, Cheryl Matney, our iTech Director, presenting today, and Yoshi Cardell from the Human Services Research Institute, here for questions. Before we begin the session, I would like to review a few things that can help you participate. Closed captioning is available on the bottom of your screen. You should see the square with the letter CC and live transcription. Click on the up arrow and you'll see, or you can choose how you want to see the captions. Also, the chat feature is available and the raise your hand feature. At the end, we will conduct a quick poll and we will appreciate your participation. Next slide, Cheryl. So our goal today is to talk about the resources that are available, highlight some narrative areas, some data points, and some comments you guys may have received over the last 2 years, and cover how your reports are being reviewed by ACL. All right, this is just a list of our resources. Cheryl may have sent you all an email today with links, and all of these resources are linked to our iTech website.
And Cherie, there's a couple of things here. I think I sent you guys a note today saying if you downloaded the guidance document prior to Tuesday, please replace it. We've updated it. And the new stuff is the PPR review tool. And then one of the older resources is the DD Act implementation activities outcomes focus. Although that resource has been out for a couple of years, we're bringing it forward just when we have our discussion about strategies and activities that you guys are using, just as a way to give you just a little bit more information. Thanks, Cherie.
Oh, thank you. All right, ACL reporting system, Verity information. So Yoshi is here with us today to answer questions you guys have regarding Verity. So Yoshi, we get a lot of rapid response questions about the PPR. So I will let you answer one of the top questions we get in the network, and that is, when will the PPR be open? So can you help us with that, Yoshi?
I sure can. So from our end, we are preparing to open the system ready for reporting November 1. And then that reporting period will be open through the due date. So the closing is as of December 30th. And at that point, I believe, that's when reports are due. We do get some questions regarding how that interfaces with time zones in terms of where you are submitting your final report. And we do keep that in mind as we are tracking the submission of reporting. We do know where you are located and can tell based on your time zone when your report is submitted. So I do know that we pay careful attention to that. But it is not as if we don't make those adjustments according to time zone.
Thanks, Yoshi. I've got one other frequently asked question, and that is, do I contact Yoshi directly, or do I need to go through the help desk to get a question answered?
I really appreciate that question. So we would direct you to go to this help desk. Last year, we know that this was all new to all of us. And I think that from our perspective at HSRI, I felt as though I was probably in the best position to answer questions as they were coming in. And I also wanted to make sure that you all had access to someone who could answer questions quickly, timely, and as you needed information to complete your reporting. This year, I am really happy to let you all know that we have ramped up our staff over here. So it isn't just me and Megan, who you might have also interacted with, but we have hired a user experience manager. So this is a person in our team who brings real expertise in terms of providing user experience and troubleshooting. And so we would direct you to go to the Verity Help Desk. And then from there, we will triage your information as it comes in. You still might get a response from me. You might get a response from Megan, or you might get a response from Beth, who's our new user experience help desk person. So please, I would encourage you to funnel your information to Verity Analytics first. And then from there, we will make sure you get the response depending on your question. But of course, I know some of you have my information as well. So know that I'm not going anywhere. Just know that we are really trying to develop a triage system for you.
So no
All right.
200 email days for you, just from DD Council staff. One other follow-up question, but I forgot it, so I'm sorry. It's been one of those days, Yoshi.
Yoshi, if people don't have access to Verity, what do they do?
So that would be a very good example of what to send through the help desk.
Okay.
If you don't have access to Verity, that's a very easy fix, and we can help you get there.
All right, thank you.
And as we move through the presentation today, Yoshi's going to be with us the entire time. If you have specific questions that you want Yoshi to answer, pop them in the chat box so we can make sure you get your questions answered about the user on the system itself. Thanks, Cherie.
All right, performance, impact, and progress. So this slide here is a reminder. The PPR is about performance, impacts, and progress, but only for the performance period of October 1st of 2021 through September 30th, 2022. Last fiscal year's performance, impact, and progress only.
So you guys know that there's 6 reporting sections in the PPR. Here is the quick list. We're going to do something a little bit different with this year's PPR webinar. We have a wonderful project advisory committee who gives us a lot of insight into what you guys across the network would like to see. And so we're stepping away from the standard traditional, here's what the section is and here's how you fill out the form. Instead, I mean, we know if you have a change of address, you know how to do that. We know certain things. We're really going to focus on some key areas of the report. So today we're really going to talk about section 3, section 4, and just a tad in section 5. But we really wanted to focus some things, bring you some information about your 2020 and 21 PPRs that were reviewed by the federal staff and what they found most frequently that could be really strong areas for improvement. You guys do so much well, so it's a little bit shorter of a webinar, which is what has allowed us to bring Yoshi to the table so that we can get all of your questions answered at once. But just know, if you need section by section instruction, we will be having TA office hours, and that is the place where we can do a little bit deeper dive. Cherie and I are always available to you, but actually the PPR guidance document is the step-by-step written instruction guide for the report. So we'll move forward, Cherie.
All right, thanks, Cheryl. So let's dive into the introduction for state plan implementation. So you can see here, there's a pro tip that has been placed in this slide for you, and that is develop after all progress reports are written. And the reason for that is the introduction comes first in section 3, but it should be developed last because it is a summary of all the details in section 4. So the subsections of section 3, the progress report. The progress report informs what you put into the intro. So the purpose of the introduction is to provide context to what the reader will see in the PPR. And here are some key things to be sure to include in the introduction. So it's important to remember that you have to include in the introduction how the council plans to share this information with the public and provide accessible formats. You have to, because it's a part of the DD Act requirement, so you have to include information about how you determine customer satisfaction with your projects and activities, and you have to discuss how you will use the lessons that you learned. Cheryl?
So one of the things that was a comment across several council reports is really to remember the council's priority is people with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities. You guys know this because the focus of all of the programs created under the DD Act is individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. As you guys are developing and outlining, I'm sure you guys develop an outline of what you're going to put in your progress report section. Remember that your priority and focus should be on your work with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Some reports are written from the lens of disability in general. And so it is very difficult for the reader, who in this case is the administration, to determine how your work impacted our priority population of intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we know that much of our work, as we're working on issues important to people with IDD, intellectual developmental disabilities, that your work will impact the general disability community and sometimes the general public in general. I mean, overall. But when you're reporting your results and outcomes as the top priority, please try to identify intellectual and developmental disability impacts first. And as we look back, we say, well, why would a council, focus on just disability? We don't really know. Sometimes we have narrative information that does lead a reader to believe it's disability in general. Sometimes we think, well, maybe they're just saving characters because it takes less characters to write disability than developmental disability. That's a real thing. But then we also have the reality of the acronym. So, and DD is even shorter than disability. So I just want to bring this as a focus because we saw the same type of comment in the state plans that were submitted. And some of you got comments to say, please focus your work on people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So again, the same thing is true for your program performance report. Want to highlight that, bring it forward to you so that you guys are aware of what the funding source the administration wants to see as your priority.
All right, cultural competence efforts. So this section is often confused for the targeted disparity. So this is not your targeted disparity section, and information regarding your targeted disparity should not be duplicated in this section. This section is about your efforts of addressing the needs of people with IDD from diverse cultures through your activities. So here you want to describe the overall efforts the council makes to conduct projects and activities in a manner that is culturally and linguistically competent. So you want to be sure to tell the results of your overall efforts here. And be sure to do your best to paint a complete picture for the reader by avoiding general statements. Cheryl, is there anything you can add to?
I think we've provided just a couple of little examples here so that you guys could see. A lot of councils write, our staff and members received training in diversity. Great. Perfect. Now, keep going. How did that impact your state plan activities? So it is, they want to know the what, but they also want to know how did that change things? How did it improve the council's ability to address the needs of people with IDD from diverse cultures? And so you'll see there's another example here about membership. Lots of you write down that you recruited people or you met with people from diverse communities. Put the result in there. Did you get more applications as a result? Did you get more appointments as a result? Same thing with processes like RFP. Just remember, this is about the council, your internal programmatic, how you're operating the program overall, rather than what you're doing project by project by project. So let's move on to the progress report. As I mentioned earlier, we're doing this webinar just a little bit differently. We're going to focus on performance, of course. This is really about making sure you're talking about what your performance was, and what it yielded. We're also going to talk a little bit about the format. And so Yoshi's here. And so we're going to talk a little bit about checkoff boxes and narrative fields. How fun. And then we're going to have a couple of areas of improvement that we want to bring forward to you for your consideration. Cherie?
All right, so the format of the progress report, as you all know, is checkoff boxes and narratives. So information in the following areas is required in the checkoff box format for the goals. So areas of emphasis addressed during the reporting period, strategies used during the reporting period, collaborations that participated during the reporting period, and the same format applies to the objectives. You all identified these items as planned in the annual work plan. But in the PPR, you will now check the boxes for what actually happened during the reporting period. It's not uncommon for people to want to check all the boxes for activities they planned, but you don't want to check activities that didn't actually happen and are not reported in your narrative. You want to be as accurate as possible, so only provide information for each item as it applies to your actual work during this reporting period. Cheryl?
So this is one of those highlighted areas, okay? As you're looking at those strategies used, we've got a couple of areas, and I know this will light up the chat box, and you guys can turn your microphones off and scream at the screen too. But let's just look at a couple of the definitions that get confused most frequently. And so why we're pulling this out is, and what you guys don't necessarily see on the backside is when all of your data comes in as a national data set, there is a compilation. They bring, they want to look at the strategies from all councils. And so it's done in aggregate form. One of the things around strategies, some of the confusion is outreach. The definition of outreach in the DD Act is really about identifying people who have DD, not known to the council, and then helping them get services. Most of the time when we're working with councils, some councils say, well, outreach is my public awareness. It's my general information I'm providing to people. So if you've got dissemination of general information or mass communication, that is a supporting and educating communities strategy according to the DD Act. So you guys can double check our definitions here. And outreach is really about identifying people with DD not known to the council. Similarly, training. Now, this one gets a lot of buzz. Training, and we do a lot of training with different people, so I totally understand this one. When we talk about training self-advocates and training leadership skills, that actually under the DD Act is a coalition development and citizen participation activity or a strategy, whatever you want it, strategy or activity. Training then is to help people, all sorts of people. It could be where you're working with people with DD and their families to get services. There's some language in there about, educating people who provide services. But the self-advocacy and leadership skills training, we're encouraging you guys to relook at that. Make sure that you're using the strategy of citizen participation coalition development. This is important because the data that you provide individually is also combined so that there is a collective set of data for all DD councils. And we want to make sure that the data the ACL Administration for Community Living has is really reliable and valid. So these are just a couple of the data points that have a little bit of confusion more frequently than the other strategies, which are fairly straightforward.
All
Cherie?
right. The narrative, the progress report narrative. So the point of the narrative is to describe the progress made or not made. So the something we've noticed a lot is the missing piece of the narrative is often information about barriers to achievement. You cannot skip barriers to achievement. You have to talk about barriers that got in the way of achieving planned outputs and outcomes. The review tool and the reviewers are looking for this information. All of these items are directly from the review tool. You all have access to the review tool. It's up on the ITAC website. It was sent out to you guys today. The narrative is also a great place to talk about resources you provided to help people with IDD and their families participate and engage in your activities. So if you, for example, if you put your materials, in an alternate format, if you provided Spanish language interpretation, if you used funds to do participant support costs, this is a great place to describe that information. Lastly, it's important to provide information to demonstrate progress made during the reporting period. So a few suggestions we have listed here. If use data, include a success story, or supply a narrative anecdote without data. And Cheryl, what is a narrative anecdote without data?
It's just a personal little story. That's all it is. And you don't have to have data to support it. But if it really helps paint the picture of what the impact of your activity was, and a lot of you use anecdotes, so I will say it really makes the reading jump off the page. It's a little more pleasurable reading. but you can, you know, you're trying to demonstrate through the written word your impact and your effectiveness. So all of these things are great ways to, you know, really further illustrate what your impact has been.
All right, content review prompt questions. So these are narrative content review prompt questions right out of our narrative tool. So it's important to think critically about the narrative you've written. As a writer, you know what's in your head and you know the details of the events that took place. It's important to consider if the reader of the narrative will understand what you've written. So these questions will help you assess whether the message that you're trying to relay to the reader is going to be or going to have a clear picture of what took place. So you want to make sure that the narrative demonstrates the progress you state you made towards the goal. And when detailing about your activities, to be sure to include the strategies. So be sure to tell the reader the way you achieved the actions you took. So was it capacity building? Was it knowledge development? Was it awareness and action? Next slide, Cheryl.
Okay.
Sorry. Narrative tips. So just please connect the data to the activity. So we have also seen a number of reports that provide links. Links are not supported. You can save the characters. The links take up so much space, and you can save those characters for meaningful information. So you can report, actually type into the report if your YouTube channel and tell us that it received 5,000 views, or how many views your podcast have, and want to give details about your podcast, but please do not include links into the report. Yoshi, one of the questions we get is also if we can print. So as people are writing their reports, are they able to print as they're going through the writing of the report? Can you answer that question?
Yes, this is Yoshi. Thank you. Yes, you should be able to print as you go. You know, it will have whatever you have entered to that point. So if you are looking for drafts, certainly you should have that availability ready for you. We know that last year we did not have the print function ready as you were entering your data, and now it should be there for you.
All right, thank you.
And
Cheryl?
Yoshi, that's any saved information, right? So at whatever point the user has saved, if they went in and they hit the print feature, they will get back what has been put in and saved.
Yes, that is
Okay.
what it should reflect.
And also, does anybody who has access, like has an account, or I'm assuming if they have an account, they have access to a report. Does everybody have the ability to print?
Yes, that is correct. So any user has the should have access to the print icon, which is in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Whenever you are actually into your, you have to actually kind of get in there first, but you should see that print icon in the right-hand corner. And that is not set to any user permissions. It is available to all.
Cool. Okay. Do we have any questions in the chat, Cherie?
Yes, but Yoshi has been doing a good job of answering the questions in the chat. So is there anyone that wants to raise their hand and ask a question, or a question that Yoshi did not already answer from the chat? Do you want to ask it aloud?
Craig.
Craig.
Hi, thank you, Yoshi. Your team has done a wonderful job over the past couple of years working on this. So a tip of the hat to you guys. One question that I had with regard to Verity is that when we had to input data in the past or narrative in the past, and we went to print it out within Verity Analytics, a lot of our formatting, like paragraphs and things like that, were lost. Is that going to be a function this year that where we can see paragraphs, or will it just become another wall of text again for us?
Thank you for that question, Craig. We have not formatted the print function, so you will get the block of text, unfortunately. One of the things that we did note that I believe in one of our kind of when we did a survey last year, that it would be most beneficial if you had if that formatting and essentially that you had in there would persist. So we have noted that, and I thank you for bringing it up again.
A question from just a confirmation, just to confirm, do not include hyperlinks to reports, websites, etc. Is that correct?
That is correct. From what we know, entering links into the system, we can't have links kind of copied and pasted into the narrative, any section of the report. Everything has to be just written out and not linking to other information.
So is that what you suggest? This is a question. So how do we share information that we would normally add as a link?
Okay, so that's a TA question. So if you're linking, for example, a publication, or you want to link to, a lot of you have done some podcast and YouTube videos. You now need to think about, maybe you want to describe your deliverables. 3 podcasts developed, 24 views. 2 publications developed, 37 downloads. But linking directly to that item, and this is my non-technical take on it, Yoshi, it messes up, it's special characters, and it messes up the internal workings of your reporting. And so it will create some problems for your abilities, I think, to save. And that's where you kind of get that little spinning wheel. It goes round and round, and that was an old song a long time ago, but it's still true today. So if you start seeing the spin, that means you probably got a special character that is not supported by the system. You will actually need to think about your content in narrative form, in the way of, how does that publication help the reader understand the impact of your work? And so sometimes viewing it through that lens helps you kind of bring down what you're including in the narrative. Christy?
Thank you. So my question is a little bit of a follow-up to Craig's question, and then an overall formatting question, if I could. So I assume then, if we're doing things in bullet point, and it's not, and we're writing it in Word, pulling it over into Verity, and it's bullet points, that the people who are actually reading the report are not able to see the bullet points if it's not in the print function, right? So they're just getting that block of text when they're pulling the report out as well. Is that correct?
Yoshi,
Yes.
I'm thinking that bullet points are not accepted, or are they? Yes?
Well, so your question is a good one. It kind of depends on how the reviewers are conducting their review. So ACL has access to the platform as well. So they could be going in and reading it that way. They could also be reading it from from a printed out version. I'm not exactly sure how they are accessing the information, but let me double check some things just before I fully can answer your question. If they are using the printed version, if that's their preferred way of doing their review, then it is likely that they will not see bullet points and other formatting of that.
So here's my follow-up question for that then. So when we're thinking about data and our data adding up to what we're actually including in the data tables, and then we're thinking through the narrative piece and how we have a 10,000 character count, and we're trying to show the impact, like that's really hard to show all of the data, get all of the data in that 10,000 character count, then write a sentence that actually shows what the impact is. That's more than just a sentence, because sometimes you need more than a sentence. So what we thought that bullet points would be a good workaround. Is it a better workaround to lump some of those data points together rather than do it activity by activity to show, you know, like if there's a similar impact shown from similar activities to I just feel like we're kind of at least our council feels like we're hitting a wall when it comes to those character counts showing impact and having to make sure that all of the data in that objective narrative section progress report really adds up to what's being shown in the data tables. That's a big ask, I think.
That's a meaty, chewy kind of question there, Christy. You've been thinking there. Wow. So remember, I know we need to look at the sections of the progress report because there's really about 40,000 characters if you put all of those things together. So I don't want you to, so, you know, when you're looking at the individual fields, let me put it that way, I think there's one 10,000 field, and I don't have because I have the screen, I don't have my guidebook handy where I can see it. But there's, you know, an overall description of the effort. So you can do some of that there. Then there's another section that talks about, and you might have it handy, Christy.
Well, and I could tell you what our workaround last year was because we had a ton of activities with no cost extension. Some of the stuff just happened to roll into that period. So we ended up doing kind of all of the data heavy stuff in the progress section. And then we pulled the stories and the general impact into the both the stories section, and we did some of it in the overall description, and we kind of like, but it felt like then you weren't really understanding how the data correlated with the impact piece. So I guess that's the question is, what's the preference then?
Well, I think that we do need, you guys have some decisions ahead, right? So the expectation, you know, it's the key activities, not every single activity that you guys do. So there is some decisions on the front end of what activities best describe your progress on this objective towards this goal for the reporting period. And if you've got those similar activities, you know, there is a way, there could be an opportunity to say, you know, we conducted 12 training activities. The most successful activities for this area were, and then tie your points that way. I know that, you know, it is a big ask to try and have you guys, you know, I know you feel like you're proving your worth, you know, the federal government gave you money and now you want to tell everybody everything. But it really is about what activities really were most impactful on this reporting period to move you closer. Everybody does it a little bit differently. So there's not one tried and true. I would say go back to your PPR comments from your 20 and 21 reports and see what the feedback was. If the feedback indicated you needed to describe in more detail your activities, that's a major clue to what you need to improve on an individual level. If there was a comment about you didn't include, or in the next reporting period include data points, you don't have to do a ton of data points. The whole thing about the data to prove your, to kind of connect to your activity is when your reviewer looks at the data and they see 200, they don't know what that means in relation to the activity. So if you had 200 overall participants and all of your training was one training, and this is on your end, did one training have more participants than another? And try to fit that in as best you can. I know if I read a lot of PPRs, when I see numbers, I know what those numbers, they're correlating to a measure. And so you can kind of, if you do this enough and you read enough reports, we do get what you guys are saying, and you don't have to go to inordinate measures to say at the end of each progress field, restate all of the numbers individually. It can be worked in the narrative. And I know those aren't great answers to your questions, Christy, because it is individualized in what it is you want to convey.
Cheryl, several on the chat box, and I was trying to look on our resource document to see if they were listed, but several in the chat box want clarification on what characters cannot be used.
Oh, Yoshi.
Sure.
Special characters, what is a no-no?
Oh, so I will answer that one, and then I also have just another little bit of information about the last topic. So in terms of special characters, one of the things that we noticed last time is that the use of special characters will disrupt some issues around saving. So we recommend not using special characters like the ones that are listed there, the and symbol, the especially equal sign. Equal sign is got you in that case, you really do need to spell out equals. And the reason why we say that is because we would rather err on the side of having you not use a special character. I will say that we have implemented a program that will automatically take out special characters. So if you are typing in information and you use the equal sign in your text, you will just notice that that equal sign will not, it will not show up. So that was one level of kind of safety that we did. So if you are using special characters, we have a program that's automatically erasing those. So know that if you are, if you really need that word equals in there, you would have to go back and write equals. Quotation marks were also one that we ran across a couple of times that were causing issues. Again, right now you're going to see that I think quotation marks will be erased. This is again just a safety measure to have you from the front end when you're entering your data to just avoid using those characters as much as possible. I'm seeing other people saying, what specifically, parentheses. I think what parentheses were. I would have to look. I think it's okay because I'm actually looking at a PPR that right now, and one of the things that I wanted to go back to. So in this little brief piece of text that I pulled up Maryland, since y'all were asking the question, I do see parentheses in the print version. I see numbering is keeping its formatting. So there's a number line, and then you'll see a space between that. And then for bullet points, I do see it's kind of putting it in as a dash. So in terms of, technically it is picking up some of that formatting and keeping it in the printed version. I don't know if it's exactly how you entered it into the system. Maybe you did use bullet points in those instances, but it is separating it out as an ongoing list with dashes. So hopefully that answers the other question, but yes. Hopefully.
Perfect. Cherie, do we have more chat questions for Yoshi? I'm sure.
Yes. I'm trying to make sure she didn't already answer the question. Yoshi, is it possible to continue using, the and character? Did you say no and, Yoshi?
Ampersand is
I
no.
think that is recommended to avoid.
Okay, and let's see here. Sorry. So for the stories, we cannot include quotes.
Yeah, just not the quote marks. Just avoid using quotation marks.
So if you have a 10,000 character limit for that, so you would need to, if you're using a quotation from somebody, you would type out the word quote and then at the end of the sentence, unquote,
End quote.
end quote, I mean. Yoshi, I think,
Yes,
Yes.
I can, you know, try to create a list of all those that are special
Okay.
characters that you might want to avoid. I can do that.
Thanks. Lanny, you have a question?
I do have a question. I just saw earlier today that the guidance document was just updated 2 days ago. I spent a ton of time separating that out and put it into a template for our staff already a few weeks ago. So I just wanted to know how much of it was updated. Like, were they substantial changes? Do I have to go back through and redo all of that?
Well,
Yeah,
probably the item where I said output when I meant outcome. That was a biggie, but since none of you really said anything about it for a couple of years, I think you knew what I meant.
Okay, so it
Um,
wasn't like substantial changes throughout the whole document. If in general, we look at output and outcome. I'll tell people to also refer back to that, but I made them all separate templates
Yeah.
for all the different sections and all of our different goals. So if
Well,
I
you
don't have
know,
to recreate the whole
well,
thing, that would be
there
good.
weren't massive changes to it. However, we did make things much clearer. We needed to offer more clarity. One of the things we do when we update a document is we take all the feedback we got the year before and we say, okay, if we have a lot of questions on the topic of X, then it's not clear. So from it's very similar information. I wouldn't say it was drastic changes. I wouldn't
Okay.
say it was drastic changes.
I already sent them the updated guidance too, but when they're working on things and they're like, oh, this doesn't really make sense, they can check the updated guidance as well as the
Yeah,
NACVD
that'd be
and
great.
ITAC, and then, yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Cheryl,
Okay.
this is Yoshi. One quick
Yes.
thing. I realized that when I was responding in the chat, I did make a mistake. I meant FY22. I'm sorry. I was jumping ahead a year. You're not reporting on 23. So sorry. All of that, but related to 22. Thank you for pointing that out.
And I'm not looking at chat, but yeah, they're probably going, we have 2 years too. Okay. Yes. We're back to 1 year. So it's great. Okay, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about data. And so you guys know that some of your data, the numbers you put into the report, are reported by goal, and then some are reported by objective. So number one question we get, Cherie, should your demographic data be the same for each goal?
For each goal?
That's the question for each
Should
goal.
not be the same for each goal.
It should not be the same. So, because we recognize that your goals have different activities and you're collecting different demographic data. So, if you're cutting and pasting from goal to goal, that does look a little odd. Just saying. So, anyway, your race and ethnicity data that you're collecting then is rolled up, right? So you're reporting by number and percent. And Yoshi, I know you've answered me these questions, but I'm going to ask you the numbers that people put into the race and ethnicity goal data points. They're putting in numbers. Does the system automatically do a percent?
So sorry, I was trying to come off mute. So yes, in that section, it will auto-populate the percentages. There are other instances where it does not, but in this section, that is true.
Okay, thank you. And if you guys did not collect or you had challenges collecting demographic information, you want to talk about that as a barrier in the appropriate section. So you guys can, there's a couple of opportunities to do that. One is in your evaluation section where you're talking about your overall evaluation efforts. And so if you had some difficulties there, you can always, put information there. Another one is in the lessons learned area. And if you've learned how best, sometimes I hear one grantee does a great job collecting demographic data. And so we're going to have that grantee teach and kind of talk about knowledge share about what works well in doing that. So you're just trying to communicate how you will use what you learned in improving something. Isadora?
Hi, thank you. So we've run up against, and I forget like what the fix was for the last run of the 2 years. But we run up against this issue where some people will fill out some demographic data requested and leave others blank. And then we were asked to put zeros in some things that was not, in my opinion, reflecting the accuracy of the data collected if it was left blank. Can there be some way to like identify like not reported or left blank that would, because I think it throws off the percentages or it throws off the counts for a number of different areas is my recollection. And so we had a really frustrating time trying to accurately report the data that we received. And we ended up having to like not use a lot of the surveys that we collected or a lot of the reporting forms collected from projects because they were incomplete and didn't effectively, we couldn't figure out how to count them.
I'm not sure about the system and the zeros, and was the request to put zeros in of the Verity system or ACL side of things?
I can't recall. I think there were some fields that would not allow you to either save it as blank, or if you kept it blank, it threw off the percentages or the counts somehow.
This is Yoshi. I can add a little bit of information. It was not related to demographics.
Okay.
But we have for some of the other items, we've added an NA checkbox, which means you would check NA rather than entering 0 if it doesn't apply. I don't think that when we were spelling that out that we knew that that also needed to be something that was for demographics. I think that we were working under the assumption that that was actually functioning different than the other things that might need a NA box. But that is something that we can revisit if that solves the data entering issue. But I think that we would need to perhaps think through that a little bit more because of how it impacts, you're right, like the percentages and things like that, so that everything, that we have no unintended implications from adding that
so if we
feature.
said we collected 84 surveys, but and our surveys include satisfaction, systems change information, IFAs, and demographic. When we got areas left blank, it became difficult to then, you're not going to have 84 responses for all of those different sections.
Yeah, this is Lanny, and I definitely had the same problem. Like, for example, oh, we had 12 people fill out the survey, but they didn't fill out the whole thing, and we're asking questions like, oh, were you satisfied with this activity? Well, if people leave it blank, all of a sudden like they could have just been sick of answering the survey at that time, but instead of saying, well, of the 10 people that answered, 8 said yes and 2 said no. Now we have way more people that we have to count as no because they didn't say yes.
I think this issue is tied to the respondent issue, the respondent of survey issue, and that has been fixed. So, and we'll get to that in just a few minutes. On the data piece for demographics, though, because you're reporting this by goal, just be aware and also offer some information about what your challenges or your barriers were, because we know that there are challenges and barriers in this particular piece of data collection. You also report some things by objective. And so remember, when you're looking at your performance measure data, it is reported by objective. And the starting objectives are IFA 1.1 and 1.2, and it's the number of people who participated. And so, Cherie, here's a question for you. If you do not report numbers of people who participated, can you report outcome and sub-outcome numbers?
No, not if you report no one participated.
Correct. Now, I've seen this with my own 2 little eyeballs, 4 of them, and I've got lots of glasses laying around, so I have more. So remember to put your participation data in. Now, this is the respondent issue I think you guys are talking about. So we do have this correction in. You will now need to enter. You will type in yourself. You will enter the number of people who responded to a survey question. So I think this helps you, Isadora and Lanny, because now your percentages are not skewed, which when we look at total number of participants and you have people not answering questions, that becomes the problem. So you will be entering the number of people who responded to a survey question to inform on that federal performance measure. So they come in as either outcomes or sub-outcomes. And Yoshi, I believe they will enter the percentage. So it asks for a number and then it's a percentage as well in these fields. The council staff person needs to calculate the percentage, I believe. Now,
I believe so too, because I think that what we wanted to do was the auto calculations were not correct. So we needed to take those out is
Perfect.
my understanding from what we learned.
yes. So just, this is the big change. So remember, you will need to enter the number of people who responded to a survey question. This is outlined in the guidance document. It's outlined in some other documents that you will find as a resource. On this particular items, respondents, just so that we're all on the same page, that is who. That is a person who responded to a council survey or a question in that survey. You're looking at the discrete federal measure to inform those numbers. And so, we wanted to make sure you guys know, we know that that's going to be a lower number than participants. Very rarely does the council have 100% people filling out questions on every item. That is also very helpful information to the council. What is your return rate on surveys? Are there opportunities to improve? Go ahead and do an assessment. Do some projects or some grantees have higher rates than others? That means they're using a method that might be able to be used in other projects. So just consider some of these things as you're looking at return rates and respondents. Craig, you had a thought there?
Yeah. Maybe I misunderstood the previous slide. So if the person does not respond to a survey, they are not part of the head count in IFA 1 or in IFA 2.
No, they are. You're reporting participant numbers in IF 11 and 12. That's straight numbers of people who attended your event or participated in your activity. The respondent number is the number of people who responded to that survey item that's informing a federal performance measure.
So
You may have,
we can
yeah,
have 100 people attend an event.
Yeah.
40 people. So that would be our baseline number of participants in our IFA 1, the number of participants in this activity. 40% responded. That's how we calculate the number for like, I was able to increase my advocacy. I was able to better explain what is important to me. I was able to become a leadership position, or those other sub measures. We don't have to draw that out over the overall, just out of the respondents, right?
Right. It's just
Okay.
the respondents, because we know that you are not in control of who and how many of the participants. It's not a requirement. It's not a condition of participation in your activity that they do a survey. You want them to, and we want to see good numbers, but this is to help you help your activities reflect the respondents' answers to these questions. And I believe this is where you're going to see those NA little fields there, because for every activity, not all performance measures would apply. If you're doing a training for service providers to improve a practice, then I've improved my advocacy skills, or I'm a leader in a cross disability coalition, may not apply to that particular objective. So know that that's going to be a change. So you guys will see that. We expect to have lots more discussions on that.
Awesome, thank you.
Remember that you guys are asked to do some checkoff boxes that Cherie mentioned. You're asked to indicate if your objective is advocacy, capacity building, or systems change. There were a number of councils, 13% of councils left this blank on the 2021 PPR. We don't need blanks. It's missing data. Missing data doesn't help paint our picture. So please remember to check a box. We say, you guys will say, well, we do everything and every objective. We do advocacy, we do capacity building, we do systems change. Pick one. Pick one. Just pick one. What is the most prevalent? What is the overriding item? But you need to pick one. We do want you guys to make sure there is a connection between identifying the objective and federal performance measures. Federal performance measures are written for individual and family advocacy and systems change. Okay, so if you identify an objective as advocacy objective and you have no performance measure targets related to that, just be aware. Just, that helps you make this decision about which box to check. If it's a systems change measure and you have no systems change, if you check the box at systems change and have no systems change measures projected, then that helps you determine maybe it's not, maybe my objective is not systems change. So that's a helpful little hint. That's your note. If you are unsure, if you've got some questions about Is this a systems change effort or is it not? We do have that decision tree tool available to you to help you guys work through. Is this a systems change effort? And that's available to you through that link right there. On the next item is a status item. So you are also asked to indicate the status of the objective. And so new means it's new and not previously active, the objective that is. Ongoing is one that was active in a previous year. Completed is if you've fully reached your objective and it's not going to move forward. So that's the completion. Again, 14% of councils left this blank. This is data that's pulled together as an entire national network. So it is data points that the administration does track throughout time. If you have an objective that was brought forward from the previous state plan, you will mark it as ongoing. So, you know, I know some of you had systems change objectives that you did move forward from the previous state plan to this new state plan. That would be ongoing rather than new, as just because it's a new state plan. Just know that's what the OIDD program staff have indicated. Okay, so we got to talk about missing data, folks.
Sure,
When
you want to answer 2 questions before you
Oh,
move?
sure. Yes.
Let's see. Sorry. Oh, well. What is the status of the emerging needs objective if we didn't utilize it?
So if you did not, so the only time, so that you're not bringing that one forward active. It should not be an active objective until you need to activate it. So I'm going to talk about Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico experienced Hurricane Fiona. They had an approved emerging need objective that was not in their current work plan. So at that point that they need to use the emerging need objective, they contact the program specialist. They say, we want to activate it. Here are the activities that we want to engage in. So it's a little mini annual work plan just for that objective. And then you receive approval and move forward. So for you guys right now, unless you have an active disaster, it's probably not going to appear in your 22 PPR because it was not active. You did not know that there would be an emerging need until it actually emerges. If you included that in your 22 work plan, the expectation was that you would identify key activities, project or planned outputs, planned outcomes, data and evaluation, and projected performance targets. So you would, and nothing happened, then you're going to get those reporting fields opened for you because it was listed as under an objective, and you would be reporting nothing happened. And then helpful hint is you're not going to activate that objective into a work plan until the need arises. Does that help? Craig, I saw a hand fly up a little while ago.
No, that helps. I was the one who asked that question about the
Okay.
emerging needs. So thank you.
I saw him shaking his head, so I was like, yeah, he's
Okay.
shaking his
All
head.
right, good.
Let's see. How do we describe an objective that is in our contingency objective and will have no reporting info?
Is that the emerging need? Are we talking about contingency plans like emerging needs?
Janet, do you want to?
Actually, her last answer answered that. We
Okay.
just referred to it as a contingency objective
Yes.
rather than an emerging issue
Okay.
objective. We're good. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. Okay, so just so you guys know, you're reporting data individually when and it's looked at and reviewed individually, but data is also gathered collectively because some of your data does move to big agency reports, Office of Management and Budget, making the budget justification to Congress. So when you leave those things blank, it does impact our ability to demonstrate our effectiveness as a whole. And so we call it the collective impact. And, you know, we do want you guys to shine, and we work very hard at making sure that you guys are reflected in the most positive light, but we need your data. So a word about missing data. Now let's talk about this very difficult systems change data point. So here we go. Systems change performance measures. When you guys have these, you're talking about specifically if you're putting numbers of policies, procedures, statute, and regulation projections in on your annual work plans, your numbers need to reflect the item. So I've given this example. If your council changed one child care policy, it's one policy. If then that one policy is adopted in 35 agencies or organizations, it doesn't magically become 35 policies. It's the same policy that was adopted 35 times. So we want to make sure that you guys have really clean data. I know that you guys in the past say, but it doesn't look like we're doing anything. Well, this is where the narrative is important. If your one policy change created positive, you know, systems change in 35 agencies, then we need those 35 agencies to shine in the narrative. But it's one policy change. Similarly, when we look at those sub-outcome measures, sometimes when we look at the aggregate data, the collective data of all councils, these numbers get really, really big for as compared to the number of systems change efforts. So these aren't independent measures for any council activity. They really need to relate to the systems change effort. And you guys can look at the federal performance measures. You're looking at, you have to tell folks, you know, you tell the feds, this is, you know, I've got one systems change effort, and then these are sub measures underneath that larger systems change effort. And the number of promising practices created, supported, best practices created, supported, it's not the number of times you use the promising practice or the best practice. It's about the practice. Okay, so we see very large numbers here. So it leads me to believe, on one hand, I can say, ooh, are they reporting the number of times a practice was used rather than the number of practices? So just a thought there. On systems change 1.4, the number of people trained, this is not a catch-all data point. This needs to relate to the systems change effort. And please know This is not a place to put Facebook posts or like, Twitter posts, website visits, other social media efforts. This is really about the number of people, and remember, your individuals with DD and family members who are being trained under a systems change effort. Those do get reported over in the IFA section. We have lots of details on that. But this is about receiving training that really increase their understanding about something related to your systems change effort. So training, when we say number of people trained or educated, that's why you really do need to have some, training in its purest form. You've increased somebody's knowledge about something rather than somebody clicked our website, because we don't know if they increased understanding about anything at that point. Not a catch-all data point, but let's remember that you can report all of the professionals that you've trained. Maybe you train a lot of professionals that are not part of a systems change effort. That is all good data to put in the narrative. Your data is still valuable. Now we're just talking about these discrete federal performance measures. The collaboration measure is another one. And so the measure actually asks you about the number of council supported systems change activities with organizations actively involved. So Cherie, you tell me, is this measure asking for the number of organizations actively involved?
No, I'm sorry.
You're thinking about it.
No, it's not asking for the number of organizations.
Now, I say this because, the systems change efforts were designed to be relevant through the entire process of systems change. So when you start out a systems change effort, you may or may not have other organizations actively involved. You may be doing research, you may be doing some planning activities, and we haven't moved to engaging others in our work. So this is not about the number of organizations. The FY21 information as a whole showed over 3,400 council supported systems change activities with organizations actively involved. Yet there were less than 1,000 systems change efforts reported. So this is just one of those points where we say, are people reporting the number of organizations here rather than the number of systems change activities or systems change efforts with organizations actively involved? The tip here is this number should be pretty close, and at times it may be lower than the number of systems change efforts you have reported. And you can use our performance measures guidance document there. Okay, other questions, Cherie, in the chat box on the data points that have been pulled forward for clarification?
Oh, no.
Good. You should be tired of me by now. So
let's see. Oh, sorry. Section 1.5 is an effort reported once per objective or once a year if ongoing.
yeah, I mean, you will report if that systems change effort is active during a reporting period. Yes, you will report it every reporting period. If it's active and you have work actively being done, yes, report it every single reporting period. Okay, the financial, oh, Craig, sorry.
I had a hard time hitting the mute button. So training of professionals is, one of our systems change efforts, activities, right?
Yes.
So if we collaborate with two different groups for two different types of training on the same type of subject, for example, supported decision-making, and we do a collaboration with the Department of Education on supported decision-making to train education professionals, and we partner with like another state agency to train their departments. Is that counted as one activity, or you want us to count that as two?
Well, it's one effort because the effort is to change the supported decision making. Your effort is your effort on systems change is supported decision making.
Okay.
But the activities, then the numbers would be combined. So you would include all of the training for all of those activities related to the systems change effort of supported decision making.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay.
And then, and then on your number of, so here, it would be your one effort that you had
Okay.
organizations actively involved. It's still one effort,
Gotcha.
effort.
Gotcha.
Don't overlook the richness of saying, but our collaborators here are, and put that,
We
note
had
that.
different collaborators on the same effort.
Yeah,
At different
exactly.
times. Okay, awesome. Yeah.
Cool. So the financial information, here's what you guys need to know. Please don't put negative numbers on this form. And usually it bubbles up because you say, I've been overmatched, and this is a good thing. Okay, so most of you know that you're using your standard form 425 to fill out the financial section. The 425 does not support negative numbers. So the expectation for councils is that you will not report negative numbers, even if you could. So if you are overmatched, and it's cash, this doesn't work if it's just in kind, right? But if you have overmatch, and it's cash, you could report in your progress report that your subrecipient exceeded match and talk about what was accomplished if they're bringing more cash to the table than what you expected. So like I say, it doesn't move into anything else. A lot of you have asked me, can we use overmatch as leveraged dollars? We did take that to the ACL, Office of Financial Operations, and the answer is no. It was originally designed as match, and so and it was submitted as match, so it's match. Overmatch would just be a narrative point if you found it was significant and it was something worth talking about there. So I hope that helps you guys. Cherie, if you want to talk just a minute about how their reports are evaluated.
Sure. So there is a review tool. There is a review tool that you all can use this tool to review your report before it is submitted. We have provided that for you, along with various other documents on our iTech website. The review, the tool has prompts. Prompts are included, and reviewers are asked for questions. Sure, anything you want to include about?
Yeah, so as you look at the review tool, I would encourage you to look at the Word document. That's the one that's easy to understand. There is an Excel version of this tool. Should you elect to do that, follow all the instructions because a lot of it is formulated and self-populates. But I found the questions to be very interesting. Some of the questions ask the reviewer for a simple yes or no. It's either there or it's not. Some of them are asking the reviewer to make an assessment, fully addressed, partially addressed, not addressed. And some of those questions are about, they ask the reviewer for an assessment on your outputs and outcomes. So they're making a determination. None of them were achieved, some but less than half, half but more than half, all. So just you guys can look at it for yourselves, but I found it very interesting to see how your report, and this is the tool that the federal staff uses to review your report.
So
Sheree?
yeah, please refer to our PPR guidance document and the PPR review tool before you submit. These documents, again, are linked to our iTech website.
Now, Verity does a great job. They can't possibly put in every instruction that is available to you, and all of the instructions from the feds and the guidance from ITAC. And that would make the system, I think it would just, say stop it. So remember, Verity provides some of the descriptions of what is expected, but might not be every single item. That's why you guys, we're encouraging you guys to use the guidance tool, or use the guidance document and the review tool. Some of you newer staff have asked about, what's the best way to start on this report? We would encourage you to use the template. You can go to the Verity system. It's so easily laid out. You can look at your current PPR and you can do an outline. Find out who has the information you need. You can assign internal due dates. Then you need to figure out how you're going to organize the data, which staff has project data, which has money data, which has, all of the data you need. And then as you are writing the report, make sure you're keeping notes as you write, like maybe I need to see Craig for more information on my supported decision making. Take breaks. Don't forget to take breaks. Fatigue is real. If you're writing as a team, meaning more than one person is responsible, get assign a point person and schedule some regular check-ins with each other to see how it's going and to make sure you're keeping on track. And I have seen some comments around proofreading. Please proofread before submitting. Double check your data, your numbers, spelling. And I will say the numbers are a big deal. I recently met with a council and I was looking at a 29% prevalence rate, and they really meant 2.9. Big difference. I was having a cow. I'm like, where'd you get that? And it was 2.9. Okay. So just make sure that you're seeing what you think should be there and that the data is there. The proofreading is real key. And as always, if you need more information, you have Sheree and I at your disposal on content type questions. The ACL program staff, each of your councils is assigned either Sarah Newell Perez or Jack Brandt. So you would contact your assigned program specialist. And for help with Verity questions, you want to use the Verity. Oh, I'm going to just make you dizzy for just a minute, but you want to go to Verity Analytics at hsri.org. And Yoshi, you get the last word. What is the general amount of time it takes for a question or a help desk request to be answered?
That is a good question. We do try to get responses back to you the next day, especially if it's something that is an easy fix. So we're gonna strive to hit that mark. If we start to notice that there are things that people are experiencing that are the same, we might kind of group that together and then kind of send out a response so that we have a unified approach to anything that we see that might be occurring for more than one council.
Perfect. And does your time zone mean anything to anybody else?
Well, I'm in Oregon.
Okay.
I'm in Pacific time.
Okay.
However, we do have staff who span from East Coast to West Coast time. So we are considering that when we are crafting our response.
Okay, thank
We're
you.
lucky that way.
Yes, you're lucky that way. Thank you. Oh, Donna, you had a question. I'm sorry.
Hi, Cheryl. Just real quick, did I see in the chat that the template for the PPR was updated now in 2022, or was I seeing things?
In the system itself, right? Or
Well, I know that there was a template that's available, I think, on the technical assistance or somewhere. And we went,
yes.
so was that one updated as well, or just in the system it was updated?
No, it hasn't changed. So what we did was made sure everything else aligned with what the OMB approved template was.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you guys for joining. I know this was an extremely long call for us, but I am hopeful that you guys have a little bit more information about some of the highlights of things to improve. So we appreciate your time today and feel free to sign off when you're ready.